Hi, Parsha Noach, first aliyah. It's been quite some time since I've made some videos, so I'm super far behind. So here goes. These are the generations of Noach. Noach was a righteous man. He was perfect in his generations, multiple generations. Noach walked with God. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but we'll just have to take it for what it says. And it says he walked with Elohim, and we've discussed the Elohim, Yud Vav Kei, quite extensively. And Noach begot three sons, Shem, Ham, and Yafet. So here Shem is listed first, Ham is second, and Yafet is last. And then later, when they go into the ark, we'll see that the order is a little bit changed. So Shem means name, Ham means hot, and Yafet means beauty. So I'm highly doubtful that that's what their actual names were. But this seems to be like their essence of who their core was at their soul level. And the earth was corrupt, whatever that means. And the earth was corrupt before God, and earth became full of robbery. So yeah, it does say the art. It's like actually the ground itself was corrupt. So I'm not exactly sure what that means. I mean, there might be many Meforshim talk about that. And what's the issue with robbery is that there's like no respect for boundaries. Once you steal from somebody else, you literally have like no COVID for them. Like you're not just like, you're literally violating their private space. And God saw the earth, and behold, it had become corrupted, and for all flesh had corrupted its way on the earth. Obviously, God doesn't see anything. We've discussed this. This is the way of Torah. Torah is, given in a way that speaks in the, the language of man. So we have to try to understand this from a metaphysical standpoint, that this is not literal that God saw anything, because God doesn't have eyes, but in God's knowledge, etc. This is like discussed in depth by Rambam Moshe Maimonides, who lived in the 11th century and wrote a book called The Guide for the Perplexed. So anybody who wants to read that can either read it in Hebrew, the original Arabic, or any language it's been translated in. And God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, and the earth has become full of robbery because of them. And behold, I'm destroying them from the earth. It's interesting. So it's not any group specifically. It's not race-based. It's not based on any specific language or skin color, or it's all specific to actions. And now Shem speaking specifically to Noah, because Noah had found favor in God's eyes, and walked in God's ways. So Noah was maintaining all the rules of society that were applicable in his time period. So that's why apparently he had this ability to speak specifically, why God and Noah had this unique relationship. So God continues, says, make yourself an ark of gopher wood. You shall make the ark with compartments, and you shall chalk it with both inside and outside with pitch. So, God's giving them instructions. And this is the size you shall make it: 300 cubits, the length of the ark, 50 cubits is breadth, and 30 cubits is height. A cubit is approximately from one's elbow to the tip of their finger. That's an approximate size. Obviously, there's different lengths that are given. So 300 cubits. So if we're talking about like approximately a meter, we're talking about 300 meters, if that's what we're going to go by. But obviously, we're not 100%, there's different shitas, different opinions as to how long a cubit is. And we're talking about a pretty big ship, but again, the ship is about to have lots of animals. So, I have to just try to accept the Torah for what it is. You shall make a skylight for the ark. At a cubit you shall finish it on the top, and an entrance of the ark you shall place on its side. And you shall make it with a bottom compartment, second story compartments, and a third story. So this is like a 3-leveled compartment ship. It's almost like a submarine, almost like how it was depicted in the most recent movie with Russell Crowe that was called Noach. Although a lot of people had many problems with that movie, it did have an interesting depiction of the ark, because it did seem kind of like a submarine, because it only had one entrance, and it did have like this sort of like hatch, and it also had a cubit. It had a place where you could see from a skylight. And behold, I am bringing the flood water upon the earth to destroy all flesh, in which there is a spirit of life from beneath the heavens, and that is upon the earth, and all that is upon the earth will perish. So this doesn't include the fish, and this doesn't include the birds, but we'll have to discuss that later. But anyways, we are discussing that apparently, all of flesh, all of animals were going to be destroyed due to the corruption that had occurred, which is pretty massive. Obviously, we don't know how many people were alive at this time period and how many animals there were in the world, but we're talking roughly maybe a few million people and several hundred, several millions of animals. And obviously, it's only 2 of each non-kosher type and 7 of each kosher type, so it wasn't every single animal got into the ark, but still there is a lot of animals that got into the ark. But we haven't even gotten to that part yet. And I'll set up my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you, and all living things of all flesh, 2 of each of you shall bring into the ark to preserve alive with you. They shall be male and female. Of the fowl after its kind, and of the animals after their kind, of every creeping thing upon the ground after its kind, 2 of each shall come to you to preserve alive. And you will take yourself every food that is eaten and gather it to you, and it shall be for you and for them to eat. Excuse me. Noach did according to all that God had commanded him, so he did. Now, we haven't even mentioned the kosher animals yet, but we're going to get to that in the next aliyah. But it does, whenever anybody talks about the 2x2, they always mention the 2x2, but they never mention the 7. That the kosher animals was 7x7. So, but we're going to get to that in a bit, and that is the end of the first aliyah. I have so much more I want to say, but I want to try and get through these videos.